Hello, and welcome to Greek the Week. I am Mona Duncan, and the purpose of this program is to always live in the now and to become more aware of our thoughts and our actions and our effective results. And so today we're going to be looking at working smarter as opposed to working harder. And put this up all the way here in just a second. There. Okay. Now we're going to be talking about working smarter. And here is a quote from Reham Baldwin. It says, "You can move a rock by yourself. You can't move a rock by yourself. Well, it depends on how heavy the rock is. You just need a lever to change the direction of that rock." And that's smart working. And so it's looking at how that we can begin to look at life and the things that we accomplish and be a little bit smarter about it. So influence has no opposite. Or I suggest, maybe I should put it that way. I suggest that influence has no opposite. So when we have a set the concept in our mind, when we know just exactly what we want to do, and we have the concept there, it can be difficult for us to see any other perceptions. And so, as well as it's difficult for us to adjust our standpoint and our demeanor to see any validity in what the other may want to say. As you can see here in these graphics I have here on the left-hand side, that the old woman or the young woman, can you see both? Can you see neither? Does it take a lot of eye movement and changes to be able to see one over the other? And then this down here, if you could see it up closer, there's a lot of words behind it. And once you can really focus in on it enough, you can actually see what it is saying. So influence, we're more alike as human beings than we are different. And although there may be those that would disagree with that, I can certainly understand that because we could just seem so different from others. But we really all want what we want. We all want a good life. We all want to be healthy. We all want to have interconnections and enough, whatever the enough is. So I still suggest that we're more alike than we're different. And I also suggest that in each one of us, we are this combination of holy and of evil. It's like the Indian was telling the young that you have a wolf inside of you, and that there's two of them, and they're wanting, and then also we want the same things. We just see things from dissimilar life experiences, and that can be even in the same family. And in the same community and in the same tribe, we can have things that we want, that because one person experienced it dissimilarly, it's just difficult to get on the same track. So in working smarter, we're going to look at 3 points. One is bridge building, just spanning the gap so that we have more, energizing our own star assistant, or listening to ourselves and listening the conversation that we're holding, and then taking charge of our creative mind. We want to magnify and lock in and intensify. So here's just a couple things on bridge building to overcome. Here, of course, this is back in West Virginia, and here is the beautiful mountains, and there's a big hollow there. And so it took time and energy and a lot of equipment to build that bridge. But now, boy, you can just go across it in nothing. And so it's learning the tips to overcome. And so we need to look at our different shades, maybe the different words that we use. Overcoming is associated with surmounting. It's rising above. It's conquering. It's yielding as we need to. Sometimes you do need to yield in order to make progress. Overcoming is the ing. It's the ing that brings us into the present moment. that whenever we talk about what I'm wanting as opposed to what I'm doing, and doing is mean it's right here, right now. It brings us into the present moment. And then simple does not mean easy. Now, simple does not mean easy. So overcoming these things doesn't mean it's easy, but it's definitely doable. So I'm wondering, do we often have a bookend worldview? And here's a little graphic that I made that is all the things in our life that's important to us. These are some of my favorite books that's on this shelf. And one bookend is the good old days, remembering, oh, wow, what it was like. I wish it was still like that now. And unfortunately, many times the other bookend will have the doom and gloom. And so, if we're holding on to the good old days, now we could, hold on to them lightly so that we can hold on to them with the memories. Don't hold on to them with the fact that you're trying to make the dogma of it has to be that same way today. Because often when we do project back to those good old days, we begin to hemorrhage about what's happening now and become so stressful and become so angry and become so disconnected. So as we can learn to live in the now, everything is always growing. It's always changing. That's just one of the facts of life. And here, this is a graphic, an eyeball with a world inside. I did not do this. I picked it up somewhere else and have used it for the longest time, but I absolutely love that because it's the way we see the world, but the way we see the world is not always the way the world is. And living in the now and seeing and developing an aware mindset that, and then looking at systems versus systemic. A system, we all have systems. We're born, and the system it's my way. It's the way that I do it because it's efficient for me. But the systemic is a universal way. And the thing of it is many, many times we can see something that we are doing that we think is A-okay that could be similar to, well, looking at addictions. One could be addicted to shopping. One could be addicted to food. One could be addicted to overeating. One could be addicted to narcotics and, and look at all those different types of addictions. And one may think, well, yeah, but at least I'm not like the other one. The systems of how we do things is universal. They're universal, whether it is a positive or a negative. Anyway, I wanted us to think and to share with you just a few minutes about the Hubble telescope and our brain, because it's a whole lot like it. Back in 2003, the Hubble telescope discovered, well, they sent out into space 2003 because what they wanted to do was take pictures. The goal was to find out how planets give birth to each other, or how there's more planets that give birth. And so they sent the Hubble telescope out in this area, and they left it there for 4 months, and constantly they were taking millions and billions of pictures. It was just constantly going off. And what they were wanting to do was to form a map so that they would know in the future how galaxies are formed. And then all of a sudden, it was a couple, 3 years into the process, they began to, oh, alas, woe is me. Well, what was the woe is me? They took all those pictures and they put them out, but they didn't have a name for them. And they didn't have a street sign. They didn't have a projection. And so even putting them through the computers and wanting the computer to line it up, it just didn't work. So what was needed was human intelligence. Human intelligence. And so the people behind the Hubble telescope and all the scientists that was working with learning out how planets are born, what they did was they came up with, in 2007, they made to the public, and I would encourage you to write this website now, www.galaxyzoo.org. And they began to ask people to take these pictures and to put them together and to line them up, give them a street address so that you would know that maybe Waco Drive started way down here and it finishes way down here. But look how many other streets intersect with it along from this point to that point. And so when you go to the website today, it says right up front, few have witnessed what you are about to see. And that is so true, so true, so true. What we can see in our own mind and what we can really see when we begin to look at things that are out there that may be a little different from what we have projected, that we may begin to see, oh, I didn't see it that way. So point number 2 is energizing your own star assistant, which is listening to yourself so that you can change your own thoughts and change the own conversation that you have with you. Now, this is a little creative thing that I came up with, that whenever you see, here's our eyeball seeing something, that whenever we see something, while we think we see it, but what is really happening is there's cones and spears and all kinds of things inside our wonderful, wonderful brain that is actually capturing what we think we're seeing with our eyes, and it's bringing it to where we can see it and talk about it and, begin to describe what we are seeing, whether it is a visual thing that can be seen or whether it is something that it's a concept. And so last week we talked about energizing our own, looking at our own star system and looking at the fact that the main function of our creative mind, or what the world calls the unconscious mind, what the majority of scientists and so forth call the unconscious mind, Dr. William Glasser, the founder of reality therapy and choice theory, labeled it the creative mind because it has so many functions that it takes care of. It helps us to keep on breathing. There are millions of tasks. I mean, they read out people that have the smartwatches or have the heart problems or sleep apnea, all that kind of stuff. You can have it programmed that you can look at your watch or look at your cell phone, and it will tell you, it will read out for you what your brain is simultaneously reading. And our unconscious mind, our creative mind, is aware of a cosmic intelligence, that there is something out there that, what you may want to call it, Father Time, Mother Earth, whatever. There's many names, but it's a cosmic intelligence. It's a divine intelligence. And it listens to what our conscious mind, our unconscious mind listens to what our conscious mind is always saying. And the creative mind is unfeeling in that it doesn't get depressed and it doesn't get so super excited. It's unfeeling, but it's also programmable. We can program our unconscious mind to know us intimately. Matter of fact, it does already. It knows us better than we know ourselves. So here, we're going to look at more. We looked at some of this last week. We're going to look at more about our creative mind. But I want to compare these two little graphics that I made. This is the one where we're looking at with our visual, and this is what the image of the mind shows us of what we think we're seeing. And it looks pretty accurate. I mean, this one's a little smaller than that one, but they look pretty accurate. So here is these are the same two systems. They're still working, okay? But this is what's happening today. I should put now up there instead of 2019. I think I did this originally back in 2019. But this is the now that we're looking at, okay? The now. This is what I'm seeing. This is what we're celebrating. This is what is coming up soon for us in America, is to celebrate Thanksgiving. And so we are looking at things we need to do, want to do, and our brain is organizing that. But this over here is our creative mind. And our creative mind, especially when we start talking with our siblings and our cousins and our next door neighbors and everything else about the things that we've had, we see that our creative mind is so full. That is saying, no, 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 no. You're talking about whatever what we experienced in 2003. You're thinking of the time that whenever I came back from, we're always seeing it differently. So this is what more about our creative mind. Our creative mind is a historian in that it records everything. It's in there somewhere. Our creative mind replays our old videos. And so we have and think that it's this in our conscious mind, that our creative mind knows more accurately what the segments of the sequence was. Our creative mind manages our genetic input, and it has the possibility of actually changing our DNA. Now, you may think that's absolutely impossible. Your DNA is your DNA. It's what's given to you at the moment of conception. But it depends on what formulas, what we put in our body. It depends on what we take into it that does change our DNA. It adjusts while a still small voice is speaking, meaning that the creative mind that is always creative begins to see that that's not affected, and it'll begin to make a little bit of a change. And it begins to be internal. All of our emotions, all of our everything, it's more internal than it is external. But the creative mind is really more internal than our conscious mind being internal. And so it goes absolutely with the law of attraction in that it knows what is best for us. And the questions is in a still small voice. The creative mind does speak to us. The unconscious mind does speak to us, but it's in that still small voice. It doesn't ever yell or holler. And it helps to heal and to restore. So point 3 in taking charge of your creative mind, your unconscious, is looking at 3 energies. Now, this over here is a little graphic that I drew in keeping with the way I see life, and in keeping with a lot of exercise rooms. There is an exercise, and I'm sorry, I do not remember, and I haven't been able to find so I could write it down and say it in this. But there is an exercise that it's right here at the back of your neck. If you will press on the back of your neck, press right in there. That with 3 fingers, just press real hard in there. What it does, it sends out a ray right from there that encompasses your third eye, which is right between your eyeballs, which encompasses your throat, which I call divine sound, and which encompasses your heart. And it's like whenever you mash on that, with that, it's kind of like getting your chakras in order. Whenever you mash on that, it's like there's a ray that goes out in a triagonal view, and it lets you see the desires of the heart. And when we have those desires of the heart, to begin to magnify them. I put a quote here by Wallace Wattles, and he defined desire as unexpressed probability seeking expression. It's what we want, and we're seeking that expression, but it goes back to the addictions that we can have. Sometimes we meet an addiction, we go into something that it seemed like a possible expression of that desire that I wanted, what I really, really wanted, even though it may have not been good for us in the long run. And so it's also to go to that wisdom heart and to believe, to begin for our beliefs to begin to speak them into existence. And I put there my definition of belief. That belief is looking forward to something that hasn't happened yet. I believe it, and sometimes we can see experiences of it. Sometimes we can begin to see how that something is taking over us in a way that we didn't want it to happen. Sometimes we can begin to see that as I believe this way, it can begin to help things increase or diminish. And then the third energy is expectation. And again, I have a definition there that high expectations equals big disappointments, whereas lowered expectation equals big appreciation. That sometimes, we're disappointed. And if things didn't meet the way we wanted it to meet, we're really disappointed. But if we can lower those expectations to realize that, you know what, the more I listen to this divine wisdom, having divine insights, to knowing that even though I can see a lot of stuff, there's a lot of stuff there I can't see. There's a lot of invisible things that are not seeable except in an empathetic way. And then having that divine insight and that divine sound so that we can speak in words that are more connecting as opposed to disconnecting. And then always to have that divine love and to realize that we are loved, that the universe is always on our side. And so, in thinking about that, the survival of threes, you may be familiar with that supposedly we can't go more than 3 minutes without air, that depending upon the atmosphere, we can't go more than 3 hours without shelter. Now, that could be like in the desert, that could be like in rainstorms, hurricanes, that could be like in situations like Alaska and the North Pole and the South Pole, that we can't go more than 3 hours without shelter, that we can't go more than 3 days without water, and we can't go more than 3 weeks without food. And that, that there's that survival within there. And I doubt that many of us. So, in wanting to survive and in wanting to always overcome, that practice makes permanent. And so, as we begin to look at what we want out of life and what we write down our dreams and our goals, and then we spend 3 times a day that we actually think about it. And that could be morning, it could be breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Or you could do something that gives you a little indication, something that draws your attention to. I know I personally keep on my desk a little bell. And every once in a while, I ring that little bell. And that just kind of, what that does is it brings me into right now. And you want to take at least 3 minutes to function into and to think about our creative mind, at least 3 minutes. And we want 3 focuses on our being. And one is to just kind of relax yourself. I put their tongue, tone, and tempo. And what I'm meaning by that is to just relax, to just let that weight that's on your shoulders, just let it roll off. And I like to think that I like to just close my eyes and put your tongue behind your top teeth. Put your tongue behind your top teeth and just relax. Unclench your jaws. And just imagine yourself floating down in the water. You're just floating, 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 floating. And you're floating down underneath all of the things that are pressing on you. And as we do that, I'm going to speak to you about what I have here about speaking into existence. That think about yourself and think that I'm always thinking all of my thoughts are coming to me in the right now. That I'm aware of everything that I think, every thought that I have is in the right now. And it's in my brain somewhere. And then in that relaxed position where you're just totally relaxed. Imagine yourself seeing your life and you're interacting with things in life from a balcony position. Because you see, that gives you a little bit of space to actually see things from a different perspective. It's that balcony position when you can see where one thing is interacting with something else in a different way than you could whenever you were face to face with that other person. And then also that you begin to rephrase negative thoughts. Begin to realize, well, I've always thought this, that maybe if I could think something else, if I could rephrase them, if I could see them a little softer, if I could see them a little more doable, if I could see them a little more truthful. And then always, as we're talking to ourselves with our creative mind, use progressive, high energy words. And so in this process, not only when you're relaxing now, but in the whole process, as you trust and allow. Trust your wisdom heart, trust your creative mind, trust your abilities. And so I thank you very much. The last thing I'm going to do here is read to you a poem that I've written several years ago, back 1990, The Wonder of It All. When you're down in the dumps, as you sometimes are, and your dreams and goals seem so afar, and you want to stand, but you seem to fall, stop and consider the wonder of it all. It is adversity that makes us strong. It's stones in the brook that creates the song. Without the night, the sun would seem dim, and thorns are found on the rose's stem. It's a backwards, crazy, mixed up law when you stop and consider the wonder of it all. To rise yourself, lift another up. To have a sweet spirit, drink a bitter cup. To lead, follow. To get, give. By becoming altruistic, you begin to live. It's the greatest mystery you ever saw when you stop and consider the wonder of it all. Roots grow deepest in the winter's frost, and the rewards far outweigh the cost. All the struggles really are worthwhile, and someday may make you smile. When you stand on the pinnacle and recall the thrill, the challenge, the wonder of it all. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it, and many blessings, and may you live in the wonder of it all. Many blessings.